impact on society. It has an impact upon our communities. It has an impact upon families. It has an impact upon churches. It has an impact upon the community. It impacts us all, and it impacts us all through and through. In the book of Luke, Jesus says, in Luke chapter 8, he says, he entered into the synagogue, and, Luke chapter 4, he entered into the synagogue, and it was delivered him a copy of the book of Isaiah. And in that, he took the parchment, or he took the scroll, and he read it. And in that, he read that the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to preach the gospel to the poor, to heal the brokenhearted, to open the eyes of the blind, and to set at liberty them that are captive, and to preach the acceptable year of the Lord. Another translation does not have set at liberty them that are captive, but to set the prisoners free. Is in more modern translations. Hebrews chapter 13, verse number 1. Remember them that are in prison. A more modern in bonds is another rendition. But remember those that are in prison as though in prison with them. Let's talk about the impact of prisons on our society. Number one, what Jesus is communicating in Luke chapter 4, even though he includes to set the captive free or to set prisoners free, he was talking about a buffet of individuals who were imprisoned. The blind, the brokenhearted, and those individuals are all imprisoned. What I have to tell you right now as we talk about the impact of prison on our society is that all of the imprisoned are not in prison. You missed that one. All of the imprisoned are not in prison. And in fact, the reason why those who get put in prison is because they were imprisoned before they got put in prison. And so when you talk about the brokenhearted, when you talk about the blind, when you talk about the alienated individuals, Jesus is talking about individuals who are imprisoned. A person doesn't start doing drugs in prison. They are imprisoned by drugs before they get put in prison. A person does not go to prison and all of a sudden start stealing. He or she are stealing already on the streets. They are imprisoned before they get put in prison. It has an impact upon our society. It has an impact upon the black community more directly than any other community. Hispanics are catching up with us. But right now, black people outnumber any other minority, any other group in America for those that are in prison. Black folk only make up 11.5 of the nation's population. But yet, we represent almost 60% of those that are in prison. Yeah. Something is wrong somewhere. Yeah. And not only that, but when you think about the black male, and the reason why you have a whole gender of people that are not in the community is that, oh boy, locked up. Yeah. He is locked up, he is in prison, and the prospects of him getting out is very dim. All of the imprisoned are not in prison. Now we can hide our heads and put our heads in the sand and just play like this thing is not a real situation. But it is a real situation that's impacting our kids. Because you have a whole bunch of children that are growing up without a father in particular. But I'm sorry to go further, Brother Frazier, and I know this is not even my point, but right now we have the weirdest thing maybe in the history, the whole anthology of black folk in America is that you got a whole generation that is missing. You got grandmothers that are raising their grandchildren because mama and daddy ain't nowhere to be found. They out there chasing the crack pipe. Isn't that correct? Y'all play like you don't know what I'm talking about, but there are some grandparents that are here right now having to raise their grandchildren because their daughter is out there chasing the pipe. The son he out there chasing the pipe. This girl who used to be a beauty queen, I mean, she was the most admired girl in high school, and then when something went wrong, she started chasing the crack pipe. Instead of being a beauty queen, she became the sea hag. That same beautiful girl who had long flowing hair now had looked like a robber bank with a 45. The same guy who was an all-star athlete, who was, who really was the envy of a lot of people. Here he is, he's walking down the street just looking for something. Weigh about 150 pounds, chasing that pipe. What I'm saying is that all of the imprisoned are not in prison. Now, the other thing, number two, we got a whole generation that is missing. What happened is this. 10, 15 years ago, they locked up the parents. Now, they're locking up the sons. And they're throwing away the keys. They're sending these boys to prison when they're 15 and 16 years old. And they're adjudicating them to be adults. You kids think you can go down and just do a little something, and slap my hand, I go to juvenile, it's all good. No, it ain't. Because they will adjudicate you to be an adult. Talked with a boy just the other day. I was all day at the Ellis unit, young cat. I was teaching a cognitive intervention class. Young guy came up to me from Houston. He came up to me. His folks are from Lake Charles. He and I had that, and we identified with one another. And he was talking. He said, man, I came down here when I was 16. They adjudicated me to be an adult. I've been in here in prison. He says he's been in prison for 22 years. Came when he was 16. There were a whole bunch of kids that were sent to prison. So what they're doing now, they sent the parents to prison 15 years ago. Now they're sending the children to prison. Right behind them. And those children, and sending those young men, and here it is, these young men are going to end up, they're going to end up spending spending most of their most productive years in prison. What a travesty. Most productive years in prison. And then not only that, but they're going to grow up in prison, and as they grow up in prison, they're going to learn a perverse way of dealing with things. How you going to be 16 years old, you get sent to prison, you grow up in prison, ain't no women